Welcome to the next episode of Lead With Me, a podcast by the San Antonio Manufacturers Association and Carlberg Consulting Group. Today, I'm lucky enough to have the current chairman of the San Antonio Manufacturing Association, and who replaced me because I'm currently now the past chair. And a lot of great stuff. I've known Mikal for a number of years, and I'm really kind of excited that he agreed to come down and join us today. Mikal today is the CEO of Harn Enterprises. It's a business consulting and investment company, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that. It's his current venture because he just exited his company that he basically quadrupled the sales and then spun it off as the chief operating officer. Want to hear more about it. But Mikal, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know early in your career you kind of started off at Kraft Foods.
Sure. Doug, thanks for having me today. Pleasure to be here. And this is exciting to talk about. So I'm a Texas boy, grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My family was also from West Texas, and I was fortunate to be able to go to Texas A&M, where I was in the Corps Cadets there, and made lots of good friends. And when I graduated, for me, it was about finding a job that would allow me to move up and travel. And so Kraft Foods is where I started. They recruited at A&M, and it was a great opportunity to learn the consumer packaged goods industry. The consumer packaged goods industry gave me a chance to learn about manufacturing for the first time. The products, I was in the sales organization. The products I sold included macaroni and cheese, Velveeta, marshmallows, barbecue sauce, Miracle Whip, mayonnaise.
You're making me hungry.
And one of the big plants was in Garland, Texas. And so I got to go through that plant multiple times. Later on in that part of the career, I moved quite a bit as I handled different accounts. I got to go to the headquarters, which was in Glenview, Illinois, and just learned the consumer packaged goods industry backwards and forwards. So it was a great start of the career as and I got to move outside of Texas. I lived in multiple places. I lived in Kansas. I lived in multiple cities in Texas, lived in Chicago a couple of times.
And that's what happens when you work for a large corporation like Kraft.
That was my thought process. If I wanted to move up, I had to move. And so enjoyed that. That was my first taste of manufacturing. After that, when my wife and I got married, Lori, and we're still married today, it'll be 30 years next year.
Oh, a lot to be proud of.
That's right. So she also worked at Kraft Foods. That's how we met.
Interesting. That happens to a lot of people.
It does. So I had a former boss that was over at what we call the telephone company. So it was one of the baby bells. It was Ameritech. It was in Chicago. And I got my taste of telecom and got to do lots of fun projects at telecom. As we talk about leading.
Boy, that's a major shift.
It was a big shift. But what was interesting is they were all under rate control for years and years. And they were looking to operate in a more competitive market. So people these days won't remember this at all, but back then you got to choose your long-distance service, and long distance you paid for by the minute. You and I remember that.
I remember that well.
This was before cell phones, so I'm definitely dating myself, but they were looking for somebody from the competitive environment to help them from a sales and marketing atmosphere. So that was very exciting. I got to do that for several years. They were purchased by Southwestern Bell, who later purchased AT&T. They changed the name to AT&T. I had the opportunity to come back to San Antonio and lead our wireline consumer marketing organization, and that was an exciting time for me. That's where my career changed at some point. My wife and I had moved quite a bit. We were here in San Antonio, and they gave me the opportunity to move into the what they called the mobility part of the business, which we call cell phones. And we had our daughter was getting ready to start kindergarten, and we said, we think we're going to be done moving. So I'd moved 10 times at that point. And so at that point.
That's a lot of moves if you have a family.
It is. So that's when I really got into manufacturing for the first time. With a business partner, we bought a family-owned manufacturing business in Seguin, Texas. And we manufactured custom rollout shelving units that would use either hydraulics or pneumatic power to power large shelves. And we stored things we were a small company, but we stored things for companies like, Caterpillar, companies like General Electric. Anybody that had tool and die equipment needed typically more efficient ways to store them. And we would actually customize these units based on the weights, based on the sizes, so they could pick those from the ceiling with different cranes and make their manufacturing process more efficient.
Well, I've got to ask you a question because I did the same thing. I came out of corporate America and bought a company or a product line and formed it myself. And for me, at the time, I was single, so it was a lot easier move. But, being married and having kids, boy, that's a leap of faith.
It's a leap of faith, but one thing I do share with people all the time is one of the most important decisions you make in your life is your partner, is your spouse. And so for me, it made it fairly easy, and she was very supportive in taking a chance. And one thing I told her when I went into it, I said, I had some other opportunities. I had some CMO opportunities here in San Antonio, but I said, look, I know that we'll make less money here for the next several years, but I think this is exciting. I think I have the chance to take something and grow it, make it bigger. It can be ours. And she said, I support that.
It's being an entrepreneur myself. You kind of look back at it and you go, wow, because I can remember getting up in the morning and saying, because I had a number of plants when I was working for Harris Corporation. I said, I've got to get this today, and who am I going to delegate it to? And I'm looking at the mirror, and I've got to figure out how to do it. So it's a challenge, but it's you've got to have it in your gut that you can do it.
You do. There's a level of go get it factor that you got to have.
Make it happen.
And it's a big difference. So as we talk about leadership today, during my time at AT&T, at one point, I ran part of our consumer organization where we had 2,200 union reps and approximately 400 managers. And then when I went on to the more entrepreneurial manufacturing side, we started out with 10 employees. And so you go from assistants to, answering the phone and cleaning the bathrooms.
Make it all happen.
It is. But it's fun. Anytime you get a chance to, I think, run your own payroll and understand what it's like to truly be an owner, it is invigorating. There's times that you don't sleep as much, but you have a different attitude about it when you own it. And I think that's what leaders we're always trying to do is you try to inspire the people that work for you to help them help them have an ownership mentality no matter where they are in the business. And so I was fortunate to be on both sides of that. And the benefit of working for a large corporation was I got to work for many great leaders, and I learned something from each one of those. And that was that to me is one of the key parts of leadership is that nobody's perfect. I believe our leadership skills evolve over time. I don't think anyone is born as a natural or great leader. I think there's some leadership tendencies, but we have to have some self-awareness and learn what are we good at, what do we need to improve in, and also what can we learn from different people that we work for, both the good and the bad.
Well, I think starting off being part of the core at A&M didn't hurt you at all either.
It didn't hurt. I had an uncle that had gone there. A key factor for me was I needed scholarships to go to school. My mom and dad were not able to help me with that. A local A&M club was one of those scholarships. Had a Pell Grant, had some other small scholarships. I'd played sports in high school, and that was exciting joining the Corps. You were part of something immediately. Yeah. And I think that's been a hallmark of what I've been able to do over time. Being part of the team is fun to me, whether it's basketball in high school, whether it's rugby with the Chicago Lions when I lived in Chicago, whether it's teams at work. I think true leaders like to compete, they like to win, they like to build teams. And part of that is you realize you have to have a lot of different skill sets for that. If we only hire people that or try to surround ourselves with people that are like us, that's going to be very one-sided, and it's not going to work. And so I know a little bit later we'll talk about what we've learned over time as leaders, but that was something for me that took years to really.
And that's something I learned very early on in my career. And matter of fact, one of the things that I've used during my career, starting back almost at the beginning, back in my Harris days, is that I got exposed to Myers-Briggs, 16 different personality types, and it kind of made me realize that having diversity in your teams is really critical. I can remember when I went through a course called the Theory of Constraints, and we were applying it for a bottleneck that we had in the factory. And as as we went through and implementing these Myers-Briggs through the organization, back then we had teams that were basically interviewing and hiring people for their team. We realized that 80% of the people on that team all had the same Myers-Briggs.
Right.
And that was part of the bottleneck. And getting some diversity in that team made all the difference in the world. I mean, it's amazing the little tools that you kind of pick up in your toolbox as you go along. They can really help your career.
There's been lots of trends on things like that. Early on in my career, I did the Myers-Briggs, and as an ENTJ, I came across a boss that moved in one time, and she was the exact opposite. I think it was an INCP. I may not even be using the right letters, but literally it was at the other opposite end of the spectrum. But we both learned over time there's times I made her crazy because I would tend to potentially sometimes shoot from the hip, and she tended to be extremely data-based. Over time, though, it really worked out well for us as we learned to appreciate the skills and the strengths of that other level. So whether it's Myers-Briggs, whether it's DISC, whether it's so many other types of
tools
out there, recognizing and appreciating differences. I know in our world today, we seem to be very divided sometimes, whether it's politically, whether it's business-wise. But in the end, appreciating what other people bring to the table is part of leadership and what makes us better. Because guess what? No matter what your business is, you're going to be serving customers that are going to be very different and varied from where you are.
It's true. So now you've basically running a company, established a company. Where did you go from there?
So several years into the smaller company in Seguin, we had doubled in about a 4-year period. But
that's pretty amazing.
You know what? I had a good business partner, and we had a good product, and I was able to bring to the table some fairly simple marketing techniques, from website optimization to just how we presented ourselves to the customers that helped us. And even though we're a small company, we looked larger than we were, and the product that we made was extremely custom. It was made for exactly what they wanted, and we shipped it fully assembled and ready to go. So those were key items, and they were really heavy duty. Frankly, we overbuilt it for what we did. At the same time, I was used to a bigger environment. And so I was, through networking, contacted by some other people and had the chance to join as a minority owner, a sign company here in San Antonio, a second-generation company. It was a good-sized company, approximately 100 employees. And so I chose to take that leap. And not only did I learn a new type of manufacturing, once again, custom, but we also did programs. So there was, how do you take custom techniques and use lean manufacturing to, help you become more efficient? A key customer for us was HEB. We did all the exterior signage for HEB. Their signs may look consistent, but there's a lot of different sizes. And they're large, a large exterior sign for HEB may be 10 feet tall by 20 feet wide. And so being able to reconfigure your plan on a continual basis. I know you've dealt with, large manufacturing in the aerospace area. That was a challenge. But in the end, what really made it fun was we were growing, and we started with a staff that we had key personnel, but we had people that we didn't have an HR. We didn't have a formal HR manager. We didn't have a controller in the accounting office.
Well, a lot of times that's when you have a small company.
That's right.
You wear multiple hats.
A lot of people wear a lot of hats. And so that was part of my role and then we started doing acquisitions. So part of our strategy was we believed that versus being a, company just in one portion of the state, that we could really roll up other companies and serve the entire state. And by doing that, customers followed us in that area. So during the 12 years I was with Comet Signs, we actually did, one merger and another 4 acquisitions. And a key part of my role was how do we put this all together from a systemic standpoint, from an operational standpoint, processes, procedures, KPIs, in a way that was beneficial to customers, and that we were all able to work together. So that was it was fun, it was challenging, and at the same time, it helped me hone my hone my leadership skills. Certainly wasn't perfect, but I learned a lot, and I made some good friends along the way.
Yeah, and actually at Comet Signs, that's when I first got to meet you.
That's right.
You and I back then were both on the board for the San Antonio Manufacturers Association. What made you want to volunteer to be on the board?
You know what? For me, it's always been about giving back. And it really goes back to, I talked about A&M. One of the things I was able to do was go to school because other people were generous with money. And so that's something my wife and I, right when we started from the first, as we were in careers, is how do we give back? How do we help others? And I think that's an important part of any business leader's responsibility in their communities. I've served on the Manufacturing Association's board. I've served on the Texas Sign Association board. I was even requested at one point to be part of the Municipal Golf Association board, even though I'm a horrible golfer.
So am I. Welcome to the club.
Yep, I had some marketing skills that were helpful. So that to me has always been a key part of life. Watch my parents, serve others as well. So it was an easy decision, and quite frankly, for the Manufacturing Association, it really helped me. Some of the tools, some of the trainings. Once again, I came from a larger company background. I was not an engineer. I was a marketing major, then an MBA for my education. And so having an organization to help point me in the right direction, provide experts to ask questions to, and provide input, that to me is a key role of the Manufacturing Association. And so it was a fairly easy decision to say, yes, I want to try to help others.
Well, I think the other thing is, I think you were early on one of the original people that wanted to actually get on a peer group and do a peer group. Tell me a little bit about the peer groups that the San Antonio Manufacturers Association has, and
Sure.
Why did you decide to get on a peer group?
Sure. I actually joined the peer group before I was on the board, and I thought it was a great idea from the board to try to stand those up. And you're always going to think a little bit about cost, and there's lots of different. Since then, I've been contacted by lots of other groups that have peer groups. What was unique and special to me about the peer group at the Manufacturing Association was it was really about the members, and it was about helping us share experiences at an executive level, typically an owner and C-level situation, where you could ask questions that the rest of you're not going to be able to ask the other employees at your company. So you're working on things about what's the most efficient or best way to set up a 401k. Why do you set up a 401k? It costs money to do that. What are the benefits of it? Is it just helping your people, or is it, being more competitive in the marketplace with that? How do you set up your insurance? What are manufacturing processes from a, not legal standpoint, but really from a, operating from a permit standpoint within a city, what's required? Who do you talk to? You don't just know all those things off the top of your head.
Well, and meeting with peers really helps you, because everybody has a little bit of different information.
That's right. And many people have gone through it. So when you say, hey, I'm looking for this piece of equipment, or I'm facing this type of employee situation, or how do you prepare for a certain OSHA situation? Everybody's got some expertise. And so really it's about sharing, it's about supporting, it's connecting. And so and so I'm still part of a peer group today. I'm a big fan of them. They've been very supportive for me, and they've helped me in my leadership career.
Yeah. So if San Antonio Manufacturers Association has a number of at least two peer groups. I think right now they're getting ready to form a third for senior managers. And they've also created a peer group for the next level down, which they call the operational manager, to really to help develop that skill set for the next leader in the organization. So SAM has really rolled out a bunch of great tools for its membership. From the Comet Signs, and I know you were a partial owner, and then down the road, it just recently got spun off, and you've created this new company. You want to tell us a little bit
Sure.
about what's going on now?
Yeah, every company has a different life cycle, right? And
I've had a couple.
That's
more
right.
than one, to tell the truth.
That's right. And so once again, it was second generation, and the decision was made that we wanted to be able to, sell that company. And so we were able to do that. A private equity company purchased Comet. It fit in well with what they were trying to do. So we did that, and there was a contractual period that I was obligated after that. But since then, it's been a lot of fun to kind of look at what my next chapter is. And so for me, I was looking at a couple of different things, but I had multiple people contact me and ask me to say, look, we'd love to, help us do what you did there. So how'd you grow the company? What does the M&A process look like? Operationally, what did you do to help work smoothly and efficiently? And so it was a pretty natural transition. I'm having a lot of fun with that. I've got some good clients, and I created kind of set of guiding principles for myself. In that, some of it is I'm going to work with people I like and enjoy. I'm only going to take engagements where I can add value. I get to know not only the owners that I work with, but also some of the people working for them, and I feel like I'm helping. I've gotten good feedback on it. So some of the projects are somewhat like a fractional C-level executive. Some are specific projects. Some are, one's a pre-revenue opportunity of a patent, and how do we commercialize that, and what does that look like? So really, it's multiple projects, and I have a little bit. It's a wider span, but I have a little bit more control over my day-to-day time in life.
Well, and you've got a lot of learning you've done over the years that you can share with other people that you've been there, and which really means a lot to somebody that's reaching out to try to get some advice. I've got a few questions I want to ask you kind of here at the end about your leadership and what your thoughts were. The first one, in what ways has your leadership style evolved over time?
I think the evolution of leadership is one of the most important things a leader can do, because you are going to learn, and you're going to have situations that you handle well, and you're going to have situations that you handle, I'll just be direct, poorly. And so one of the things I learned over time was, and so much of it's about communication, and it's about being straight with people, and it's about having the end in mind. But one of the early situations I learned from was I had an employee came in complaining about how they were dealing with another employee. So I did what I thought every smart young manager could do. I listened, and I brought the other employee, and I related what the first employee said. The second employee broke down in tears. What I really learned in that was, what's the best way to try to handle things like that? How do you get people to work together? Me trying to be the intermediary and go, what was your story? What was their story?
I'm always work.
I don't remember which book it was, but at that point, I'm taking the monkey on my back.
Oh, you got that right.
And so one thing I really learned on that was to say, let's talk about the situation. Have you talked to this person? What have they said about it? Why haven't you talked to this person about it? And really where I've ended up in this, and it's helped me throughout the years, is when that's happened again, multiple times after that, I've said, after you've had that conversation and told them why that you think you're not working well, or what you would prefer to see or get along better, if that's not working out well, I'd be more than happy to sit with the two of you and have that discussion.
It's a great way, great approach,
anyway,
and it works.
It does work. So it's a lot like the employee that comes and asks you for advice on something, maybe work wise, maybe otherwise, and you want people to have ownership in the situation, right? And so there's many times where I love to read. I read a lot of books, and so I'll refer somebody to a book, and I'll say, you know what? I think there's some key learnings in here for you. Why don't you take a read on this, and then come back to me. Do it, and this is before AI. We'll come back to me with just a one-page summary of what you learned, and we'll go through this in more detail. Not a lot of people actually come back to you having read the book, but the ones that do truly want to learn, and those are the ones you build relationships and you're able to mentor. Some people want a free ride. What I'm looking for as a leader is the people that are willing to make a commitment, be part of the team, and that show that they want to be leaders. And I'll invest my time in anyone, but those are the ones that
those
become
are the ones
special.
that are going to circle back 20 years from now and thank you.
Correct.
My next question, when you face significant obstacles or challenges in your journey, how do you navigate through them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm gonna give you there's book answers and there's honest answers, right? So the way I handle those is first I pray about it. That's always been a key part of my life that I learned from a very early age growing up. So I believe strongly in the power of prayer and that the Lord has a plan for our lives. Second one is, I talked about this earlier, I married a great woman. And so she's always going to have a viewpoint that is probably a little bit different than mine. And I've learned that sometimes her gut instinct is better than mine. And so I listen to her, and I know you have
my wife's the same way. Let me tell you, it's my sounding point. And with us, we both worked together in the same company. And if it wasn't for each other, watching each other's back and taking care of each other, we wouldn't have been successful as we were.
Right. So I don't know that I would be able to work in the same company with her, and she probably says that more so than I would. But she's been a business, person in business for 40 years, incredibly successful in her own right. And so anyway, she's a valuable source of information, guidance for me. The other way I've handled situations is to be thoughtful, and really I talked earlier about, begin with the end in mind. One of the most challenging situations I dealt with was during COVID. I mean, we saw in the sign business, business it stopped. People were scared for their life and for their health, and there wasn't much else going on at that point. And we, as a leadership team, very quickly pulled together and said, what's a worst case scenario? And we had just come out of several acquisitions, and so we were a bit levered at the moment. And we said, what do we need to do to make sure that in the end, the business survives? And so as leaders, that involved taking pay cuts. For us, we'd never meant to, as we had acquisitions, we never really meant to have 5 manufacturing plants. We made the very difficult decision to close some manufacturing plants. We did it thoughtfully. We did it quickly. We made a decision, and then we communicated clearly to the employees, and we told them whys. And we said, this isn't hard, but being able to explain to people the whys, speak honestly and truthfully, and take action. Those are things that I believe in as a leader. And we came out of COVID stronger as a company than we went into it.
I tell people owning a business like owning a restaurant, it's 24/7, 7 days a week. And with that, I mean, I know, and this is something I'm very focused on over time, because you kind of learn over the years. But how did you manage to balance your professional life and your personal life during these periods?
It's a great question, and the way I've asked that question before as a young leader moving up, and as a father and a husband, whether you're a business owner or a executive at a large company, as I've done both. You're the only person that can answer that question. I've asked other people for the answers, and nobody can really give it to me. In today's environment, you're always connected, and you choose where you're going to put your time and focus. And I've always been a person that I believe it's not just about the end point, that it's about the journey. And as part of that journey, you have to plan time to get away, and you have to know what relaxes you as well. And being able to turn it off and truly turn it off and not stay in the middle of it, determining what's truly important priority-wise. For me, that was my family, being able to, break away and, see a performance, for my daughter in some situation, or just be there with my wife. Taking a vacation. I love to travel to faraway places and doing that. And then trusting, this is where the leadership comes in. Hopefully you've built a team behind you, right? If you haven't built a team behind you and it all centers on you, that's not leadership at all.
And it's not going to work either.
It's not going to work. And I will say, I'll kind of go from that into a little bit. I did put together a leadership process that worked well for me in my career. It's got 5 letters. I never came up with a catchy name for it. But I've done this multiple times with people, and it's always made sense. So the 5 items are expectations, development, inspection, accountability, and recognition. And for me, that starts with, if I can't set clear expectations for somebody in the role, how can they be successful? Because I believe everybody comes to work each day wanting to be successful. And so I've got to be able to, as a leader, set clear expectations. The second one is development. We all need development in some form or fashion, whether it's actual skills development, whether it's personal development. What does development look like? Is that classroom training? Is that group training? So that's the second one. The next one then as a leader is, how do I inspect? You know, the old good, inspect what you expect. So if I set good expectations, then what's the inspection process? You can't inspect without KPIs, right? You know that very well. I mean, that's something that we're rolling out within the Manufacturing Association right now is KPIs for all of our different committee groups. So inspection, and that involves consistency, timeliness, and being able to look through those. The next one is accountability. I think too many people think about accountability as a write-up or terminate somebody's employment. We used to say at Comet, we're not in the firing business, we're in the sign business. And so accountability could be as simple as you made a commitment to me for X. How are you doing on that commitment? How are you on that commitment? If not, why? Is there something I do to help you? Do you need more training? Was I not clear on the expectations? Sometimes it may go to the ultimate, which is, it's a will or skill issue. And if it's a skill issue, we can solve that. If it's a will issue, I'm going to work really hard on that. But sometimes that's up to the person that you're working with, that individual. Then finally, recognition. This is one I tend to be pretty job focused, but we got to recognize people. And the recognition, I think too many people and too many companies get caught up in formalized programs. I think being just thoughtful in the moment, meaningful, and not always doing the same thing. And it doesn't have to be the same thing for every person. And it can be simple. When you really balance those 5 items, and it's a balance, and that's the other thing, it's going to be different. You can't make it a program. It's not a system. For each individual, that's going to look different. Some people may be strong in one area, not another, but once again, expectation, development, inspection, accountability, recognition. I call it EDIAR, which to me is the recipe for winning leadership. And so that's something that I've been able to develop over time, and I've used that at multiple stops to really try to help grow people and grow the organization.
Well, I can tell you this is a great way to end this podcast, because this is the takeaway of what we just walked through with your career, that people can take back and apply it in their lives and their business. Michael, thank you so much for spending the time with me today, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with you and taking the San Antonio Manufacturers Association to the next level. Thank you so much, Michael.
Doug, thanks for the opportunity.